That's
Oh.
weird.
Yep.
Yeah, mine shows that you're recording.
Okay.
Okay, super.
All right. Yeah, I don't know what's up with yours, but okay, we're good.
Okay. Something new and exciting every time. Okay. So this slide here, we've been showing at each one of our meetings. This is the third meeting that we've held to work on the through this upcoming groundfish biennial cycle. And really, the red circle there just highlights where we are and covers what I just mentioned in the previous slide. But again, also the last time we met was on March 20th, and that meeting we had to prepare ourselves for presenting our preliminary preferred alternative for council consideration in April. So I'm just gonna move ahead.
Hey, Heather.
Yeah.
So we're supposed to advance the slides ourselves? Is that the way this works?
No, you should be able to follow along with us. Are you seeing my slides move forward?
No, I had to advance it myself to get it to go with you.
Oh,
That's okay.
did you?
I can do that.
I think.
Well, and I think, Heather, I advanced it because I think you went ahead. And so we'll make it work, but
It's okay. All right.
mhm.
Everything's good.
Are you guys seeing slide 4?
Nope.
Now they should. Do you see slide 4 now?
Nope.
You see harvest guidelines and recent catch?
I did now that I advanced it on my screen, it was something I had to do.
Well, we're just going to make you guys work tonight.
Yeah, I am used to the hand holding also. So, should I go hit the forward button a couple times?
Yep.
Oh, I just hit another button that said sync. So let me see. That's weird. Yeah, I guess I see, Heather. So we're learning new things about Teams. If I sync to presenter, I go to slide 2, which suggests that's where you're at.
Okay.
All right. Well, we'll just tell everyone when we advance, I guess.
Let's try this. So I actually backed out of the one screen I was in where it was trying to pull up my camera unsuccessfully. Okay. So maybe we're okay now.
Okay.
What
Can
slide
everybody
should we be on?
Do you all see the slide that says harvest guidelines and recent catch?
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Okay. It should be 4.
Yep.
If you can see slide numbers. Okay, good.
Okay.
All right. We won't let Teams beat us. All right. So this one, I just kind of wanted to touch base, kind of high level. I know most of you have looked at, recent catch for the last couple of years. So in this table, we've got the species that we typically catch in the recreational fishery. There on the left-hand side, the harvest limits that we've experienced. There in the next column to the right, so that provides 2021, 2022, 2023, and then 2024. So you have the years for comparison. And then it's got the projected harvest limits that have been adopted for 2025 and 2026. And then the actual total mortality in the fishery for each of these species from 2021 to 2023. For the most part, we have been in good shape relative to catch in 2020, like in the last couple of years, and in 2023 relative to the harvest limits. And even looking to 2024, although some of the harvest guidelines or limits go down from where we've been in the last couple of years, our catches are still below. I'll just caveat vermilion rockfish, but hopefully that we'll have addressed that with outreach And some of you folks may begin to see some posters or other information about the copper, quillback, and vermilion that are prohibited in May, June, and July. Otherwise, really the primary stock that we're concerned about is Canary, and that's why it's highlighted. That's been the focus of most of our attention through the winter and spring in terms of analysis and discussion. And you can see there that our catch in 2023 was 22 metric tons, and that compares to a harvest guideline of 2025 of 17.3. So where we had hit, in 2021 with catches of Canary at almost 40 metric tons, then it dropped a little bit in 2022. Our final estimate for 2023 did drop it substantially compared to those 2 years, but it still puts us higher than where, at least on paper, we need to be for the 2025 and 2026 cycle. For 2024, where we're at, our recent catches are all below the 2024 harvest guideline. So that 41.8 metric tons is what will inform this year's management, just to kind of make sure folks remember that we're talking a year out from now when we talk about the changes that might need to be made for management. So I think that's good. If we want to advance to slide
Could I
5.
ask a question?
Oh, sure.
Is it okay just to jump
Yeah.
in? Or?
Yeah.
Okay. This is just looking out ahead, and I'm thinking about yellowtail rockfish, knowing that our Washington recreational fishery has become more and more dependent on yellowtail.
Mhm.
I believe that there is either a regulatory amendment, probably a regulatory amendment, maybe an FMP amendment unlike Canary, that contains the allocations between trawl and non-trawl and on down through the different sectors for non-trawl. Am I remembering that correctly?
I think so.
So I don't want to hold us up at all. I'm not meaning to do that. I'm just, given what's happened to us on Canary, I don't want the same thing happening to us on yellowtail, which is also, I believe, a coastwide, or at least north of 4010. And
Mhm.
I'm just, when another
Mhm.
stock assessment comes along for yellowtail, I just want folks to be thinking ahead in case there's something we would need to prepare for. So
Yeah.
that's all I'm going to say about that.
Okay. No, that's very helpful.
Yeah. Thinking ahead is good, and I don't have the list of the stocks that we're considering in front of me, and actually don't remember, but we're talking about stock assessments in June too. And
I do think yellowtail's on the list.
yeah,
I don't remember how high it was prioritized across the different advisory bodies, but it's on the list for the
it's
next.
good to be forward thinking. And okay,
Thanks for that, Phil. Good point.
very good. So really up until April, and during this analytical process we did a really deep dive into the recreational catch for Canary rockfish and going all the way back to since when Canary retention was allowed in 2017, to really understand the fishery, and we learned a lot from that. I think the last meeting that we had too on March 20th was really valuable in what we learned from all of you about Canary rockfish and just understanding the differences in the years and what could have contributed to the differences in the catch during those years that we had to look at. You know, we noted that when the depth restrictions were relaxed in 2021, that we saw some really impressive Canary rockfish catches in areas that had been closed for many, many years, 15 years. And there was kind of an excitement about being able to access Canary rockfish there. And so in Washington also, we've been really precautionary about how we have worked toward relaxing our restrictions on Canary rockfish retention. So we really don't have many years when Canary rockfish access was not restricted. And I would even say it is now, just because we still have the 30 fathom line, we still have deepwater lingcod in the North Coast, we still have the 20 fathom line and all of that. So it adds to uncertainty when we're projecting catch and effort into the future. And I think that it was a really fruitful discussion that we had in March about that exact thing. And that is really difficult for us to have a real certainty around our projected catch for Canary rockfish. So, and just, I think you all are keenly aware of the discussions that we had in April and the Washington recreational proposal that was brought forward, requesting additional Canary rockfish for the Washington recreational sector. And it prompted some pretty difficult discussions regarding allocations. Yeah, I just pausing here. I was going to say, I want to try to be positive here, but I would say some of the conversations were disappointing in that they weren't really allowed to be a conversation. And I also want to just give kudos to Paul for all the work he did and for the backup that folks like Dave and Ryan and folks provided Paul in the gap during those conversations. But what we hope to do is really clarify that the current allocations of Canary rockfish are decisions made, were made on an ad hoc basis to really meet the fishery needs each biennium. They're definitely not, as Phil was mentioning for yellowtail, they're not adopted into the FMP, so we reconsider them every biennial process. And we also really talked about our ability to be flexible when considering how we can meet our fishery needs relative to allocations and our state-specific recreational harvest guidelines. So what we talked quite a bit about, at least even on the sidelines with our counterparts in Oregon and California, but how we can approach Canary rockfish allocations and recognize that they aren't hard caps on catch. So there is flexibility and ability for us to have an informal sharing approach kind of to Canary rockfish. And this is exactly how we have navigated the nearshore rockfish complex with Oregon and California when that was problematic for us, I think going back to 2015. So it's really just the bigger objective is an awareness that we want to stay below the recreational portion of the non-trawl allocation. So rather than pursuing this, a 5 metric ton additional Canary rockfish allocation scenario for further analysis. In April, we saw value in looking at just a 2-year allocation scheme that incorporates this this sharing idea. And Oregon and California were very supportive of that idea. I think Caroline McKnight from ODFW did a nice job of acknowledging the situation and providing support during our comments on this topic. And then also Phil
Caroline McKnight from ODFW.
CDFW, excuse me,
Yeah, California.
California. So also during the meeting planning discussion, I think Phil and Corey did a good job of flagging time to talk about Canary allocations that are outside of the specs process, and so that we're not doing this, you know, under the time constraints of the specs deadlines that I think also came into play during our discussions in April. Anybody want to add anything to that before I move on? That summary.
Steve had his hand up there at one point.
Yeah. All. The other,
Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
thank you for that. That was awesome. What you just said. All that. Weird side note. I know I don't always agree with you guys all the time, but most of the time, but Washington State's conservatism has really been not a bad thing for the fisheries out here. You know, I don't always agree with it, like I said, but when we go out, typically it's great fishing. And it's because we have some good protection out there. So you know, I don't know. I disagree with it, but I agree with it most of the time and appreciate it. And you guys did a great thing working, try to get more of the allocation for the Canary. But what you just explained really softens it up, and I think we're pretty good. And also, another note, based on the effort and watching the spring season bottom fishing, the traffic in Westport, not just for the charter boats and the kicker boats, private boats, but in town is minimal. It's like, I don't know what's going on, the economy or whatever, but I'm thinking it's kind of an index for the summer and the spring season, and we may not have the big push effort that you know that we like to expect. So anyway, I just want to give you guys kudos for the working what you do, and totally appreciate it. So
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
you're doing well. So thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Phil.
Well, first a question. You said something about Caroline McKnight being supportive, very supportive. What was she? What were you referencing that she was supportive of?
The informal sharing agreement approach, like we do with nearshore rockfish. So the idea that if Washington gets close to our 17.3, this idea that and they're not, I think their catch of Canary is the furthest below their harvest guideline of the 3 states, that approach was very acceptable to them. Not like, we're gonna hoard it, we're gonna need it all, that kind of thing, but very much of like, yeah, we're definitely open to the conversation about sharing.
Okay. And then the other that doesn't need to be said, but we're really gonna have to get out in front of this thing next time around. We've learned, we've tried it the same way twice, and we have similar results. Although this time around, we thought we were getting out there a little earlier than last time, but as it turned out, it was too late, and so it's just like I said. I know I don't have to say this to any of you guys because you know it, but we're really going to have to think about how to introduce the topic next time around, and when in the cycle or during the process of the 27-28 cycle. So, but I know you guys have got that on your screen.
Yeah, I think it's a fair point, and I was gonna add too, just like, I didn't mean to say, oh, it's good because we're gonna share Canary. I think the other part of that is the conversation is not over. And that was flagged, and the conversation about the allocation for Canary is going to be difficult, and we're still going to have it. Maybe just not between, April and June 2024 to get 5 metric tons. It'll be a bigger discussion. And I think the reaction we saw from the trawl sector and even the non-trawl commercial toward holding on to what they feel is there just because nothing has changed lends a lot to what you just said, Phil, and thinking about how we're going to do that strategically and get anywhere. So we probably need to start thinking about it now.
Yeah. No, I think that's helpful too. And I would just add for some folks, because I know this was a question that was posed to me, why we didn't pursue like hard, to have a hard pursuit on the 5 metric tons was because we could be flexible. And that if we had managed to pull 5 metric tons from other sectors, that might actually count against us in some manner. Like, oh, you guys had your needs met back in 2020, we worked all that out. And so just because that's been a question, that was sort of the rationale, like under this flexible sharing approach, we can prosecute our fishery in a way that's meaningful without substantial reductions, where like if you look at on paper what we'd have to do to get below 17.3 if we were held to that is different than just being able to kind of have this flexible sharing approach, and avoids us getting some a 5 metric ton that might cost us more in the long run. So just to kind of share that aspect. We want more.
Mhm. Okay.
Should I advance? Are you?
It
Any
should have advanced. Oops, I just went too far. Should be on preferred alternative.
Okay.
Do you see
It is.
it?
Mm-hmm.
Oops.
I think we all just almost have to. It's weird. So yeah, everyone should be.
Slide 6, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Mhm.
It says preferred alternative discussion.
It was so neat. You gave us control, but you lost control in the process. I don't know if that's
We
the
thought we
right
had it all
trade-off
figured
there.
out.
Yeah, I know. Not sure. Okay. Well, just means we've got to be more coordinated. So yeah, so with all this in mind, and having looked at, different data time series and ways of, projecting for 2025 and 2026, and from where we had our April report, the WDFW report, where we were proposing as a preliminary idea of a 4-fish bag limit. We'd have a ACT set as a backstop. And then reflecting kind of upon or based on the actual council discussion, we've sort of pivoted and are thinking now to have a 5-fish canary bag limit, to discuss that tonight, and then also back off from having an ACT that would set like a number threshold. And we'll talk a little bit more about some ideas we have for how to respond to any need to like adjust management measures in season here shortly. But at least at this point, kind of pivoting from where we were at in April. And although it looks like on paper we'll exceed the 22 metric tons, or based on our projected catch, will exceed the 17.3. Having looked at the data, the really limited time series we have, I think we can't say that our projections are that certain. And also, we have a lot of flexibility to respond in season and adapt to changing circumstances, and that's also, it doesn't get captured in the data. So that kind of lends itself to our thinking of taking an approach where we start with a bag limit of 5 fish that hopefully has like less of a negative impact relative to folks wanting to go fishing. I think Paul did a really good job in his I guess testimony to the council that if you drop a bag limit down far enough where it still looks like you're getting fish, but it really becomes unappealing to anglers to book trips. They don't, so a 3-fish bag limit might be like equivalent to a zero bag limit or zero opportunity. And so, yeah, I think that's kind of where we've landed now. With an approach where we can monitor catch in season. We get catch updates. There's a month lag, but we get them monthly. So we would know at the latest by July, maybe early August, where we stand in 2025, and use that to kind of consider, what options we might take. And also under the, sort of this flexible sharing arrangement we've talked about, we'd be able to look at, if our catch in conjunction with Oregon and California at that time was at any risk of exceeding, our state collective catch limits. So we could move on or take any questions there. Just kind of signaling a pivot from what we had in our preliminary WDFW report that was submitted in April. Okay, Paul?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
It was interesting. One of the Oregon guys came up to me during the meeting and he showed me that in regard to the flexibility. For example, California's projected mortality is 36 and their allocation is 46.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be interesting to see this, how much they approach their allocation as opposed to the mortality. And that would be an avenue to get some fish if needed.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep, good point, Paul.
Okay. All right, well, we can go to the next slide. And which I gotta do myself here. So if we need to reduce or slow our catch of Canary in 2025, and we've analyzed a whole slew of options through our planning process this winter and spring. This slide might look familiar. We had a few more items on here in previous meetings, but have kind of narrowed it down to some potential in-season actions that could be considered. We heard at our last meeting that there's really strong interest in knowing what would be implemented if a change is required. And we agree we want to be able to communicate that to the public in advance, what the actions would be. And besides knowing what the action would be, we'd like to put some, numbers to triggers, kind of structured in an if-then approach. If we hit a certain point relative to, the 17.3, or if we're looking at the end catch, but through the end of June, and we see it's at, 12 metric tons or 15 metric tons, we'd have sort of an if-then approach to have choices to make if we're concerned that there's not a sufficient buffer. We don't necessarily have to hold ourselves to staying under 17. That would be where we'd also have discussion with California and Oregon. If we projected we might go over that a little bit, then we do have that latitude. So I think, and that could be part of this if-then. If we're at a certain point, that might be one of the pieces that we add to the then part. And we can tailor, those responses, like I said, based on whether we think we're going to come close, or if there's some sense that we're going to blow right by it, then maybe we need to have, in our back pocket option that's takes more stronger action. So I think at this point, we really kind of want to hear what, preferences are from stakeholders for what kind of action we take in season. Some of this, will depend on how far we are relative to where we think we should be around the 17 plus or minus. But yeah, getting a preference for what actions we would want to take, noting that, again, we're probably not going to have a good idea of where we're at until at the earliest, the end of July, more likely early August. And so it doesn't leave a lot of the season left to have, to work with. But so just keeping that in mind, like the timing of when we have the catch data. And then we're also, well, I guess I can pause there and take a question. I can't see. Let me see.
It's Phil. Go ahead, Phil.
Okay, go, Phil.
Thanks. I'll let others comment on their preferences about if we have to do something, what it is.
Mm-hmm.
My question was, we've talked about this flexibility and the willingness of ODFW and CDF&G or CDF&W looking at potential sharing of some amount that maybe they have that they're not going to use. But what about the rest of it? I mean, we have 500, whatever, 508 is 1,000 is our ACL overall or something like that. And can we also take a look and see what's going on in the ITQ fishery, or the catch here program fishery, other non-trawl sectors, or is our only potential option for flexibility if we get in trouble is with the other two states from a recreational perspective?
I need to double check this because I think Lorna heard one thing from Keely that was very specific to recreational, but I'm also reading this is from the GMT's report in March, where it's really just staying within the non-trawl, keeping the non-trawl mortality within the non-trawl allocation. I know, and the reason Keely was saying sectors matter is more of our ability to do anything with the IFQ fishery. And so if it's not tapping into that, I think that's where there's more flexibility.
Mhm.
But at a minimum, keeping the non-trawl mortality within the non-trawl allocation, I think is the biggest we can look at.
Okay.
Yeah. Although in theory, I guess, in the FMP, as long as collectively everyone's under the ACL, like there is a limit where we all sectors are sharing Canary, and it's sounds likely that some of those Canary could be stranded that are being held for lightning strikes or banked for IFQ needs. Yeah, it's probably when all is said and done, there'll probably be Canary left. But yeah, I think the guidance we got was more, we need to look within the recreational sectors for that sharing. Okay. So I think, yeah, just getting input on preference for what kind of in-season actions we might take, whether that's implementing, a deeper cut into the bag limit, closing all or part of September, doing something that has like a restriction relative to the deep water lingcod, getting feedback there. And then the idea is that we don't have to make a decision and have this all laid out at this point, like between now and June when final action is taken, that we can actually circle back. Heather and I were chatting about this and thought, really seeing how 2024 played out would be really helpful, because if it shows something similar to 2023, or, maybe as Steve was saying, if effort's low, maybe we're going to be okay. I think it won't be so constraining, that 17. So really kind of want to see how 2024 plays out, and are thinking of having a public meeting where we could, bring these ideas forward, package that says, here's, if we reach this point, then this is what we'll do, and get your feedback. Then we could do something like that next, say, winter, that we don't have to have that all thought out right now.
Yeah. So, right. Have one more year of data. Let's see what 2024 is. Come back together. And Lorna and I, in the meantime, will do kind of assuming we have to do something. The first step is always going to be, do we need to do anything? Are we at risk of exceeding the non-trawl allocation? As Lorna said, are we even close to approaching the ACL? Will tell us if those are the first bars. If there's something that we definitely need to do, if we're going, to exceed it, if we've caught a certain percentage, through June, 99% of it, and there's no room, we're going to reach the no room between catch and the ACL, then what are we going to do? If there's a certain amount of room, what are we going to do? My sense is, my gut tells me, because of all of the buffers built into everything we do, those things aren't going to play out. And that's why we also thought doing this, not having an ACT in the federal rule, not having, all of that prescribed, but doing it in a way that's very transparent to all of you, because we heard that in March. You said, we don't want to mess around with this during the season. We want to know, what's going to happen when. So doing that with this extra year of data that we're going to get this year. And I know I'm just repeating what Lorna just said, but that's how we're viewing it. And so I'll pause and let you
I like it.
add in, Jason, and your hand was up too, Steve. Go ahead, Jason.
Oh, yeah, sure. I'll go. Yeah, it's pretty slim pickings in town right now. And I know that the last couple of years been pretty tough for halibut, and the deep water hasn't been that great. So I really think that it's gonna, come down a little bit, our catches on the Canary and stuff. And also, I think that we could still sell like 5 canaries, but when it gets down to like 4 or 3, like if we start having to make cuts, then that's going to be more like 0 canaries, because we're going to go fish for yellowtails, or something else. So yeah, there's like a tipping point where there's going to be, you're going to try for canaries, or you're just going to be like, all right, we're not going to do that. We're going to go for yellowtails. So, I mean, hopefully we could be at like 5 or greater if it came to that. But I really do think that the number is going to come down this year, because it's been hard the last couple of years. And I think a lot of people are going to just throw in the towel, kicker boaters especially, and be like, yeah, we're not going to do that. And our people, they'd be like, yeah, we did that, and it was fun, but we didn't catch great big lingcod, so we're just gonna go do a regular bottom fishing trip. So that's kind of where I'm at on it. So thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jason.
I agree. Hopefully we can keep the bag limit at 5, and you guys said some great stuff about working with the other states, and yeah.
So besides the 5 fish bag limit, go into 2025 with that. And again, it's a little hard maybe to say, but not knowing where we're at. But if you have to take what would you see as maybe a viable option that's not a deep cut? Would that be a sub bag limit, or would you prefer like closing part of the month of September?
I would say just lower the Canary limit and don't disrupt the deep water fishery. Personally, just lower the limit if you have to whatever, because like what Jason just said, we can target other fisheries, basically yellowtails. That way, if somebody had a deep water trip, later on in September or whenever, they could still prosecute their trip, but Canary's a draw, but lingcod is the main thing. It's a deep water lingcod trip primarily, and if the sub limit was less than 5, whatever it was, just like what Jason said, you probably wouldn't really target on it, but you could have your secondary fish would be yellowtail, and you still might catch couple Canary anyway. So
we had quite a bit of discussion in our meeting also, and we were kind of more, it felt like, in favor of closing September 15th than jeopardizing like a lower than 5. It felt like people were more in favor of stopping September 15th,
I feel like I'm hearing 2 different things from you guys. I'm struggling.
Yeah, I think my dad might have missed that part.
Okay.
Hey, Heather.
well, yeah. That, yeah.
So
As
would
far
it
as the
be,
North Coast goes, we'd rather see the bag limit lowered and keep the length of the deep water fishing.
okay,
Okay. Got it. Thanks, Dave.
Thanks.
yeah, that's good. And I'll just say that as we structure this, there'll be sort of like from the least amount of action we have to take to, you know, depending on how much we have to pull back, if at all, then we would probably go to the maybe something that you prefer less. But if a bag limit wouldn't get us a reduction there, wouldn't get us there. So,
So what I heard from the Charter Association in Westport, and I understand why you were hearing two different things, because you were, I think everybody felt that they can live with a 5 fish bag limit, and that if it goes lower than that, then as Steve and Jason said, they would go do other things and yellowtail. There was also a fair amount of discussion that if you had an in-season management decision to make, that the last 2 weeks of September might be preferable to give that up rather than cut the bag limit further, if that would do it. But I would say that more discussion is needed. I'm glad, as you mentioned, we have more time to think about it, but those were the two things that were out there. We had about 20 guys guys and girls at the meeting, and there were those two different perspectives. And so having a little bit more of a chance to think further about that would be helpful.
Okay, good.
And I'm going to sign off. I got to go do another call.
Okay. I think we're wrapping it up. You know,
Okay.
our final preferred alternative is a 5 fish limit, and track it in season and manage cooperatively. All of that.
Thanks for being just so open and transparent and
Yes.
listening to us. And it's been a great process to be part of, and more to come. But thanks very much.
Thanks, Phil.
Bill, bye-bye.
Thanks, Heather and Lorna.
Yeah, so I think what we can do, and it probably won't have, I don't want to commit. I'm learning this process and think, oh, I've got time. And then Heather reminds me, Lorna, we still got specs through June. She's been through it for a long time. But yeah, our idea was that we could come up with something on paper, package of, you know, here's the ifs and then the thens, and maybe put some numbers to it. I can kind of probably share with you from the analysis we've done what we think we might save by closing the latter half of September versus a reduced bag limit. And it's possible we'll even have 2024 data to look at if we have a meeting, you know, that's not maybe in January of next year, but a little bit later, since the season doesn't start until, you know, March, or really even get underway after that. It might give us just a little bit more data to work with that would be helpful. But the idea is we'd bring back something for you guys to actually look at and be able to help us sort of structure into something that looks like it would work.
Will it work if we revisit this at our October halibut meeting?
We could touch base on it. For sure, we'd have maybe
Will that give
some.
you enough time for?
We wouldn't have final catch estimates for 2024.
We would have, yeah, we wouldn't
be
have, yeah, we'd have preliminary maybe through September, but
so, but I mean, we'd have an idea of whether 2024 was vastly different or like, so we'd have some idea, but not enough to like look at it in more detail. But those catch estimates are usually finished by the end of December. So it kind of depends on when we hold the meeting, what we'd have available, but to have something that we could share that you guys could provide feedback on. So,
Perfect. Thanks.
Heather, I got one more quick question.
Oh, sure.
So, side question, is halibut, is the annual limit 4 or 6? Or
6.
it's 6.
mhm.
Okay, so we can say that because when you get the catch record thing, it's 4. When you buy your thing from the state.
Yeah, they need
4.
to issue you another one. So you need to, I'll have to check with licensing because they were going to set it up where you got a 4 card and then a 2 card.
Okay.
So what
And they-
happened with me is I got my 4 card, and once I paid for it in the computer, they knew I paid for it, and they were able to print me my other one for 2.
Okay.
Okay.
But you had to pay for it, and so the computer showed that you got it and received your 4 punch, and then they'll hand you the 2 punch right after that.
Okay.
Okay.
That makes sense. Yeah, because it's not an additional charge. That makes sense. You have to pay for the catch record card, and then, yeah, the 2 card doesn't have a fee.
Okay. That's okay.
That's good
Get
to know
out
that
there.
there's
Thank you.
Yeah, that is good to know how that's working.
Yeah.
I should just go buy fishing licenses to test the system.
I get questions on it every day.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
bet.
bet.
So,
People text me from the licensing agency. They only gave me 4. Go back and get your 2.
mhm.
Good.
So Heather,
Mhm.
again, you and I have been texting back and forth. Congrats. Are you going to be able to stick with this program plus your new job?
Yeah, it's
Good.
in some form.
Some form?
So,
Perfect.
yeah. Thank you, Dave.
You better not leave us.
That's what I told her, Steve.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Please. We just got each other trained. You can't leave us.
That's right.
I know. She's got all us men trained.
Oh,
My
yes.
wife can't even do that.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's definitely the plan. Lorna is amazing, and so together we're going to be able to keep doing this and IPHC and all of that. It'll work out.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Do we want to just touch base on the last slide? There's next steps.
Sure.
The June meeting in San Diego, which is where the council will adopt the final management measures. So for us, that would be our preferred option would be the 5 fish bag limit. And we all know that we'll come back and revisit how we're going to implement any actions next winter. So that's the 2025 WDFW preseason public meeting that's on the slide there. But what's adopted in June goes into effect either in federal and or state rules as of January. And we do have on our radar future council consideration of Canary allocation. And we'll be thinking about, I think Phil provided some good guidance there about thinking when and how to bring that forward so it doesn't get hung up on specs timing. So I think with that, that's all we had for you guys tonight.
Yeah. I guess we'll see some of you in June. Maybe.
We're remote, thank God.
Okay. Good for you then.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, everyone. We always appreciate your time, and your input. We'll have a WDFW report out, but I think again, it'll be short and sweet, very similar to what we talked through today. And, yeah. Let us know if you have any follow-up questions or input.
We'll see you in June.
Thank you.
Okay,
All right.
thanks,
Thanks.
Paul.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Lorna.
Bye.
Thanks, Heather.
Welcome.
I'm going to stop recording.